we can leave that to the end. Okay, so we're going to start talking about how does symbolic interactionism help us to understand socialization. If you remember, in the last class, we talked about socialization. It's a process in which we learn how to interact with people in different groups or different social groups. And it goes through stages that starts in birth and continues through the lifetime, and it changes over time, right? And for example, we saw the other two perspectives that are functionalism and the conflict theory. That functionalism said that in the case of socialization, all the spheres of society have to work together. In the case of family, in the case of church, in the case of schools, they work together in order to make sure that society works as a whole, and they can integrate and create a person that has all the different skills and abilities that they need in the social life. As well, we saw that the conflict theory helped us to understand that people, like when they get to a level certain of age, they are accustomed to their social status no matter what, unless they develop a certain awareness of where they are and how can they change that reality. Now we're going to see how symbolic interactionism works in this context. And there are 5 things that you see right now on the screen that symbolic interactionism takes into account when we are talking about this kind of process. The first one is the self-concept, okay? And self-concept is something really interesting because it's the concept that you have about yourself. And there is something interesting over here because sometimes the concept that you have about yourself can be different to the concept that other people may have about yourself. For example, I guess I mentioned this little experiment or this little example before to you in class, that it was about, this was, if I'm not mistaken, a TV advertisement for, I don't know if it was Nivea or Dove, but it was a brand that is in marketed to soaps and beauty products. What they did is that they took 100 ladies, 100 women, and they asked them to describe themselves, okay, to describe themselves in the best fashion as possible. And what happened was is that they started describing themselves, but since they have the self-concept that they were not pretty enough or they were not as attractive as they other people may imagine, what they did is that they hired a drawer, a person who could draw them based on their description and see what kind of portrait can he come up with based on that. So in this case, what they did is that they started describing themselves, right? Like, for example, I have a big nose, I have really, really long ears, I have really big back eyes on my eyes, etc. So what happens with this point was that they were describing themselves as ugly, as something that it was uninteresting or unappealing for other people, and they started drawing them. But what they didn't know is that at the same time, they were asking to some people who love them to describe them as well. For example, in some of the cases, they asked them to their parents, to their boyfriends, to their girlfriends as well, because they, um, and as well to their husbands, wives, etc. Any person that you can imagine that they appreciate them. And they asked them to describe them as well. And their difference was that these people who loved them described them as beautiful, as amazing, as having nice characteristics, and they showed them the final results of the drawings. They didn't know that people who loved them were describing them at the same time and creating another drawing based on that. So first they saw their drawing and they were disappointed, they were scared, they were depressed because of how they saw themselves. Like the image that they were portraying was like of an ugly person, a person that was uncomfortable to be next to him or her. On the other case, when they showed them the drawing that was made by the people who loved them, they were impressed. Some of them started crying of happiness because they realized that how they believed they were was not how people was looking at them or how people perceived them. Therefore, that changed their opinion about the things that they considered were facts about their appearance. Then we have the looking glass effect, that is the concept of yourself based on the opinion that other people may have. The looking glass effect is something that we all have experienced in certain fashion. Like, for example, in this case, for you may think that other people, this is a concept that sometimes we have, that we think that other people have something against us, or some people is always trying to make us feel bad, or is always laughing at us. And you will see that this normally happens with paranoid people, that when they see that somebody's laughing, they think, okay, they are laughing at me because of this and this and that. But basically, the Lucas Glass effect is the opinion that you generate of yourself based on what other people think of you. This is really common, for example, when people start bullying someone else. When that happens, the problem is that people develop this kind of effect in which they believe that everybody thinks I'm fat, therefore I should be fat. Therefore, if everybody's saying it and that is the opinion that they have, they are not lying to me. Then we have the concept of the significant others, that are people whose reactions are the most important to your self-concept. In this case, we're talking about probably your best friend, probably your brothers or sisters, or probably your parents that are your significant others. The people who's closer to you and that their opinion, good morning, Maria. So their opinion is more important to you than anyone else. Like, for example, you will always believe that there is some people that they don't care about you and how do you look like and what do you do, but they love you. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter how. Sorry. So these are the significant others, people that no matter what the other people say, you believe that what they say, it's like more pure, something that is aimed towards helping you, that people that you appreciate the most. Then we have role taking, that children begin to imitate behaviors without understanding why. Role taking, we have gone over this stage in your lives. Well, probably when we were little kids, like probably when you were 7, 8 years old, we all went through this process in which we start imitating our probably older brothers or sisters, or imitating our parents and their job that they do and the things that they do, because that is the way in which we understand through the symbols, through the different actions, through the different mannerisms and roles, how in this way society works. The generalized others is the integrated conception of norms, values, and beliefs of the community of society. This is like kind of different with significant others, because when we talk about significant others, we talk about people that is closer to you and appreciate you. In the case of the generalized other, we are talking about the values, the beliefs that we have as a society. Like when we were talking about the norms and the things that we have in common and the proper behaviors, that's basically it. And with that, we are just finished talking about the three sociological perspectives and how they work in the socialization process. Now we're going to jump into the agents of socialization. First, when we talk about the agents of socialization, if you have read the book, we think about the family first. Why? Because the family is the first place in which you learn to socialize with people. The first exposure to the world occurs with the family. So the first exposure to the world. So why the first exposure? When you are just a baby, when you are just born, you don't have contact with any other people that is not your family. It's not that you can make friends when you're a baby or when you're just a newborn. You cannot. You still have to develop the abilities to make new friends and to meet new people. Some essential developments occur through those interactions with a small number of people, none of whom the child has selected. With the family, the child learns too. I want to make some emphasis over here. None of whom the child has selected. So in other words, they cannot choose where the kind of family that they are going to have. They cannot choose the kind of parents that they are going to have. But what they can really have something to do with is later on in life, the kind of friends that they choose. Because family is, as I said, the first group in which you develop. You cannot choose it, but that is the first group to which you are exposed. And basically, the development of your values and you as a person will come first from the family, and then other factors, as we saw with the functionalism, will interact to shape you later on in life. But the things that you learn in family is to think and speak. Speak is pretty obvious, right? You learn to speak the way your parents do, or you learn to speak the way in which your older brothers and sisters speak, like with certain words, like with certain, for example, in a family that, this is generalizing, but that is not 100% true. Let's imagine that in a family, somebody doesn't use nasty words, okay? So that means that the children, they are not going to develop the ability to use nasty words because that's not part of the environment in which they develop. In the case that people think or parents may think that if going to church is essential for you to develop as a human being, these kinds of these kinds of behavior patterns and thoughts can be transmitted to the next person, and they believe, okay, my parents think that going to church is important, therefore it should be important. Here, you internalize norms, beliefs, and values. So internalize, that means that you learn them by heart and they become part of your behavior. Like for example, if your parents, they start putting restrictions since you are a baby, then they will shape your behavior and the way you interact with the environment later on in life. For example, imagine a kid to which their parents tell them, okay, if you go to another house, either if it is your friend or whoever, don't touch anything that is not yours, okay? Do not touch anything. What this happens is that kids are going to internalize this norm, this value, and this belief. No matter where they go, they will respect other people's property and belongings because they have internalized that already. And that already becomes a behavior that will determine a certain pattern in which you're going to react. For some basic attitudes, that mean that in this case, there is a difference between attitude and aptitude, and an attitude is, remember, something that supposedly you inherit. Like an attitude, we can say it like a behavior or a set of skills that you inherit through lifetime that will help you in different situations, okay? Then, for example, a kind of attitude that you can develop in a family can be honesty, tolerance, patience, and forgiveness, and many others that you may copy from your parents and learn from them. Develop the capacity to imitate any personal relationship, like, for example, if you see that your mom and your dad are loving and caring to one another and they respect each other, that is the way in which you're going to treat people. This is really intricate with psychology because in psychology, you will see like the vicious cycle effect. That is an effect basically in which you imitate the behavior patterns of your parents or people that were there before you. Let me exemplify this. Like, for example, if you were born, according to psychology, if you were born in a house in which your mom or with your dad was always hitting your mom or using domestic violence or using psychological violence against her, or vice versa, your mom over your dad, then unconsciously you are going to acquire that capacity and imitate that pattern in relationship. And when you get to have a relationship, you will continue the cycle, the vicious cycle of that kind of behavior. That is not 100% true in all of the cases, but that is like the common trend that what is happening, that people see like my parents were like this, therefore without wanting it, without thinking it, they behave like that. So you acquire a self-image as well. So you acquire like your opinion, like the idea of who you are comes from your family. You can say, I'm this person because your parents or your mom, your dad, your friends, they may tell you who you are. I have had some cases. I can tell you in the other place that I work with, I have some students that they say, Mr. Teacher, I'm worthless. And I asked these kind of people, why do you say that? And they told me, because my parents have always told me since I was born that I'm useless, that I shouldn't be here, that I'm stupid, that I cannot do things on my own. Therefore, they developed the self-image that they were worthless completely because people were creating that self-image on themselves by telling them who they were or by their actions letting them know that they were not somebody that they would love and appreciate no matter what. Now we talk about socialization in schools, and in schools takes like the secondary most important role in developing the socialization process because family is the first entity that will create you as a human being, but school is going to take this further and probably reinforce what you learn at home or change some behaviors. This is something important because I will tell you and I will give you a piece of advice for life. This is not just for sociology, but for in every aspect in life. It's important to learn how to learn how to unlearn, and to learn how to relearn. And school sometimes is in charge to teach you that through different aspects. First, to learn how to learn. It's like there are many ways in which you can learn something, in which you can learn to behave, in which you can learn a new language, in which you can learn a new skill, etc., etc. We were talking about this before we started the class, like learning new skills. Now we have access to many, many different sources on how to do it. And it's important to learn how to do it. We talk about learning a lot, but nobody talks about how we learn or how you should learn. And it takes a little bit of discovery and trying to understand yourself first to learn how to learn and the things that are most effective for you. Try to unlearn because there are certain behaviors that are attached to our mind thanks to the mindset that we have created through years, even at home, at school, or at society, that we need to unlearn. A really cool example of this is like, for example, right now with the movement or the of the LGBT community and the open mindedness of people of accepting these kind of behaviors, many people are starting to unlearn what it was socially established something correct and something proper, and they are trying to relearn what is considered normal for society or for people nowadays. Therefore, there are some times or there are some patterns of behaviors that we learn that are mistaken. Therefore, we need to know how we can unlearn them and relearn what's proper. And school is basically in charge of that, but I will let you know how. Because children under care and supervision of adults who are not relatives, this is important. For the first time, many of the child's relationship with other are impersonal. Rewards and punishment are based on performance rather than affection. Something important over here. Rewards and punishments are based on performance. School will prize you because of performance. Like if you are the best student, if you are somebody that's always attentive, responsible, honest, and everything, school is always going to respect you. Like for example, if I will take this literally right now, I will say, okay, the only ones who are, I see that the 6, 7 people that I just right now in the class, because of your responsibility, because of your behavior and your performance, you are the only ones who are going to get an extra point for the period exam. If I were to say, apply this concept right now. And the others, because they were not here and they were not responsible with the schedule and everything, they will not receive anything, okay? Just you, just the 7 of you, the 6 of you. In this case, I'm rewarding, if I were to do this, I'm rewarding your performance. Why? Because as an student, you are expected to do something. You are expected to show results. You are expected to be on the meetings. You are expected to hand in your homeworks in the days it's supposed to. But in this case, that is the system and how it works. And when punishment is created, it is also based on your performance. Like if you don't present a homework assignment, or if you misbehave at classes right now, well, when we're in the classroom, somebody misbehaves and we try to take that to the coordination and then they receive a punishment for that. But this is not based on affection. This is based on how you perform as a student. Why? Let me tell you why. Because in the adult life, when you get to adulthood and you get to have your first job and everything, people and your bosses, and this is true, is not going to reward you because they like you or because they appreciate you. They are going to reward you because probably you did a good job, you're working extra hours, you're doing the things that nobody wants to do, and that's why you receive a reward. Like for example, if in any job that you have or you will have later on in life, if you want to ask for a raise in your payment, they will ask you, we can give you a raise just as you give us a really good reason why you should deserve it. What have you done for the company? What have you done for the establishment that should be recognized with a better payment? They don't care about if they like you, they not. You probably may be a friend with your boss outside of job, but that doesn't mean that he is going to have or she is going to have a better treatment with you. Therefore, socialization helps us to learn in schools that performance is rewarded. Is this a really good behavior? Is this something that we should ponder more or change? I cannot tell you. That is something that probably we can decide on our own. That's your opinion that you can create about it. But the socialization process in school involves as well the hidden curriculum that teaches children discipline, order, cooperation, and conformity are characteristics required to success in adult world of work. These are something that are really important. When we talk about the hidden curriculum, we talk about things that are not specifically described at school. Like, for example, if you were to describe school for a kid, that it was going to be the first time that he will go to school. Right now, imagine like a 7-year-old kid. They didn't go to kindergarten, right? They will go to first grade and they have never gone to school before. But they see in a movie or in a cartoon or whatever that going to school is fun and they want to go to school. So are you going to tell a kid that going to school means that you're going to learn discipline, order, cooperation, conformity? No, because they don't know that. They don't understand what you're talking about. But you're going to tell them the stated patterns or the things that they are going to see at school. You're going to tell them there you're going to learn, there you're going to have teachers, there you're going to do homework, etc., etc. But you're not going to tell them you're going to be scolded if you do something wrong. You're not going to tell them, if you fail 3 times, you're going to go into the record or something like that. You don't tell them those aspects. Why? Because they are not stated in the mission of a school. The mission of a school that is stated is to teach people, to give them the capacities and abilities to deal themselves with the adult life. But these are capacities and abilities as well that are not completely stated. First, discipline. How do schools teach you to be disciplined? Well, they teach you to hand in homework assignments on time, to be at classes on time, to be respectful, to pay attention, to follow orders or instructions in this case that are essential to succeed in the real life. If you're not somebody that is disciplined, you're not going to last on a job. No matter what kind of job it is, you always should have discipline on what you do. Order, to be an organized person, to be somebody that has everything in check, that you don't have everything on the wayside. That means that you have everything disorganized and you don't know what you're doing. Cooperation, and let me make an emphasis on this one. In school, sometimes we take the approach to let you work with people that you are more comfortable working with, like affinity groups. Because according to psychology for education, that is the best way to do it. Why? Because it has been proven with many studies and many things that you work better with people that you like is working with. However, life is not always going to be like that. At a job, you may have people that you don't like and you have to work with them. And they are really terrible people and you don't get along whatsoever, but you have to work with them because your boss or somebody higher than you told you so. In that case, school teaches us that by, for example, letting you know, like, okay, today we're going to work in groups, but I will make them, says the teacher. Therefore, you need to cooperate. You need to learn how to deal with different people that are not always going to be the people that you like. And conformity. Conformity. What do I mean by conformity? I guess this is some of the things that are the schools taking the socialization process that are wrong. Like, for example, they don't teach it in directly but indirectly. Like, for example, you know that the person who are the smartest people in the class and you say, okay, I know who they are. I know that they are always going to be praised. I know that they always participate. They say everything correctly. So why should I participate? Why should I care? Why should I try? And then you conform just to be a regular student because you see that you will never going to be as good as the others. But that is not completely true. But that is something that is probably negative, is indirectly being taught by schools. Anyways, so peer group and socialization, the child's peer group composed of individuals and probably the same age's interest. Is the only agency of socialization that is not controlled primarily by adults, and children usually belong to several peer groups. A child may belong to a play group in the neighborhood, a clique at school, or after school club or school. A clique is a group of people. So an after school club or sports team. When we talk about a peer group, we're talking about the group of friends that you have in any aspect that you can imagine. If either because you share the same interests, the same goals, the same ideas, the same things that you like. Therefore, this is a group, remember, that is not controlled by adults. So that means that adults cannot tell you to whom you have to be friends or to whom you have to relate to, but this you decided on your own. Therefore, in a peer group, you are socializing. That's another agent of socialization, the group of people that you surround yourself with. As I said in the last class, you learn from people how to behave. You learn from people how to interact, and you learn what patterns and what different behaviors you follow to be accepted or to be changed by a group. Okay? And you can be part of different groups at the same time. Like, for example, you can be part of a group at church, be part of a sports team, be part of a group of friends at school, and that is okay. Because that means that at that stage, we are socializing with different individuals. And this is going to take place throughout the lifetime. Like, for example, when you get to adulthood, you will have a group of friends or a peer group that is part of your job, another peer group that is the friends that you have been having the whole life, a peer group that is probably the friends that you have at the university that you want to hang out with. So it's totally integral for us to know that we always keep this in mind. And finally, we have the mass media and socialization that are means of communicating designed to reach the general population. They include television, radio, newspaper, you know them, the internet, tapes, and this. The mass media displays role models for children to imitate. Learning these role models helps to integrate the youth into society. Why? We always see musicians, we always look up to musicians, singers, writers, actors and actresses, many people that is famous. And what happens is that you see that people adopt these behaviors, adopt how they behave, how they speak, how they dress. Right now, you see, like, for example, there is a bloomish trend right now that people wants to dress or act like a K-pop person or a person from Korea. You will see them that they buy the same kind of shirts, they try to do the same kind of makeup and haircut and try to behave in a certain way. As well, another example of this, probably you have heard about Logan Paul. You know who that person is, that he's an influencer, he's a YouTuber, that he has been labeled as a really bad influence for young people because of the attitudes that he shows, because of the way in his behavior. And what happens is that shamelessly, people that are younger and more impressionable, they follow these kinds of trends and behaviors and patterns that other people do, and they accept it as their own because they see that these kinds of behaviors are appreciated or are prized in society. Therefore, they try to behave in the same way. What I'm trying to say by that is that the media can shape you more even than your family, friends, or school. Why? Because right now that we're in the technology age, we see more behaviors and patterns and all those kinds of things that are bombarding you day by day with the different things that you do. And believe it or not, consciously or unconsciously, we are going to imitate some of these behaviors. So sometimes you probably have heard the phrase, you are what you eat. But in this regard, when we talk about society and the socialization process, you are what you see and what you listen to as well, because that is going to shape you in certain ways and certain behaviors, because the ideas of other people can have influence over you, and the way they behave, they can shape the way in which your behavior is going to take place later on in life. And finally, with that, we are going to leave the processes of socialization for the next week. And I guess that with this, we are almost about to catch up with the activities that we're working on T-Books right now. So let's see, we have 5 minutes left. I will stop the recording right now. Remember that this is going to be available for you later in the day on the YouTube channel for you to check and to reinforce or to share it with the other people who couldn't be here at the class, and they can check it as well.